Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Kurt LaLomia, and I'm from Turning Point Financial. Thank you for signing up for a very special presentation, a three-step plan for your disabled child's future. We're really excited about today's presentation and believe everyone will come away with some new ideas. Some of you know me from my financial education webinars. This one is different. I came up with the idea to do a webinar around special needs planning because I've come to learn that most people have a connection to someone in this category. And I have one of those. It happens to be an autistic 14-year-old nephew. Some of you may know our presenter, Eric Jorgensen, and I'll introduce him in just a moment. A little housekeeping before we get started. I like to be upfront, tell everyone what's going to happen here. Today we have two basic parts to the presentation. First, we're going to have Eric take us through his experiences, both as a parent and as a professional in the area of special needs. He'll share his background and talk about many of the things that he's learned over the last 2 decades. We're going to have Q&A at the end. Please use the Q&A window at any time with your questions. We want to help you understand that there are actions you can take today that can have an impact on your family's life and lifestyle in the future. We have everyone muted, and while my video's on, yours doesn't need to be. 2 things not happening today. 1, we're not here to sell you anything. And 2, we can't provide personal advice in a group setting like this. A one-on-one call with Eric later on, that may be more appropriate so he can gather more personal information. Eric and I worked together in financial planning before Eric struck out on his own to form his own company, Special Needs Navigator. Eric is a retired Navy submariner, a cancer survivor, and a single dad of an intellectually disabled child. His expertise comes from the School of Hard Knocks. Eric painfully wove his way through the vast maze of confusing and complicated benefits and resources available to individuals with intellectual development challenges. Folks, I present Eric Jorgensen.
Thank you, Kurt. I appreciate the introduction. As Kurt mentioned, I'm a dad first. I started this journey when I retired from the Navy in 2012. I was widowed that year, which, as you can imagine, threw my plans, such as they were, into upheaval. My wife had a sudden illness, spent about a week in the ICU, and then I took her off life support. So I had to extend my time in the Navy for 6 months while I got my affairs in order and really rethink what I was going to do when I got out. I used to think I was going to be a consultant or something with the clearance that you had in the Navy. And then taking over from my wife used to be the caregiver, and she did everything for my son. His primary diagnosis is autism. And he was 12 when she died. So just taking over from her, figuring out what I needed to do, IEP, school, what happens after school. It was challenging, to say the least. I mean, some of you may be dealing with this now. I don't know how old your children are, but I want to talk about the things that I learned the hard way. I have a timeline up here that talks about when you should be doing certain things to consider. And when we go through the slides, I'm going to pause after each one just so I can address questions as they come up, because there's a big difference between each stage. It's hard, and there's some things that as federal employees you will have that other people don't have. There's things with your federal employee health benefits. There's possible things with your pension, with FERS, that you can do with your disabled child that other civilian employees don't have, and we're gonna touch on those. I have sent Kurt all the slides and some handouts that he'll share with you after the presentation. And again, I encourage you to ask questions as I go. If I talk too fast, because I'm from New England, just raise your hand or put something in Q&A so Kurt knows, and he can have me slow down a bit. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to talk about, and this is all for the planning I'm talking about, is planning for your child to become an adult. I mean, that's ultimately what's going to happen for most of our children. They are going to age out of school and rely on the state or the federal benefits that are out there. And it's important that you know what those are. So every state is required to help parents start their children with transition planning. The state you live in will vary at what age that starts. In most states, it'll start around age 14. Other states, it'll start around 16. But there is a very specific transition planning that should be getting done during the IEP process. IEP stands for Individualized Education Plan. The conversation should be started about, is your child going to be in a diploma track or certificate program? If you've never heard those terms, the diploma is exactly what you think it is. They finish high school just like everybody else, and they get a diploma and they leave school at 18, 19 years old. Certificate means your child can stay in school till they are 21, as long as it's required by their disability. In many states, the state benefits don't kick in until 21. So there's a lot of good reasons for a child to stay in school until 21, so there's no gap in the services that are provided under the IEP to the services that are provided under a state Medicaid waiver. Now, this says apply for DDA. This is if you're in Maryland. Every state has a Department of Developmental Disabilities. It's going to be called something different depending on the state you're in. But I wanted to get it out there so you knew what you're looking for. You're looking for an acronym. It'll have the word developmental disability in it most of the time. And that is what's going to administer the state Medicaid waiver. Medicaid waivers pay for residential services when your child ages out. It gives them a place to live. That's what residential services are, a place to live, or supports to live independently if you provide them with an apartment or a house. They provide personal supports, which are those independent living skills that many of us take for granted: cooking our meals, buying our groceries, mowing our lawn, doing our laundry. Those are the all personal supports. Community living, integration, community living skills, that's getting out in the community, making friends, becoming part of the community. It could be volunteering. It's getting out of the house, so you're not in the house 24/7. And then the last thing that a Medicaid waiver is going to pay for is vocational supports, helping you find a job, keep a job. And all four of those are under what's called a home and community-based services waiver, HCBS waiver. Again, every state has these. It doesn't matter what state you live in. The nomenclature may be a bit different, but what they provide is almost identical state to state. It's how they provide it that's going to get a little different. It's which agencies, how many nonprofits are available, how much funding is available. That's going to vary by state. And the waiting list is going to vary by state, how long it takes you once you apply for the waiver to actually receive services. The second on here is apply to DOORS. And this acronym is common for several states. It's the Department of Rehabilitative Services. And again, every state has a Department of Rehabilitative Services, although the names are different. It's a place where you would go to get assistance to find a job and keep a job if you have any type of disability. PREEX is a national resource, and it stands for Pre-Employment Transition Services. Historically, you can only start getting vocational support from the state when you turn 18 or 19 years old. Pre-employment transition services are there to allow you to start accessing job supports as early as 14 years old. And this is really useful to start helping our students build that resume they're going to need when they start looking for a job and get those job skills that many of us, again, take for granted. Maybe we worked at fast food or something, and we just learned customer service and we learn all of those people skills that individuals with disabilities have to work extra hard at. And DOORS is there to provide that short-term individualized support and short-term meaning usually about 6 weeks. So when my son did pre-employment transition services, he worked over the summer, got paid a salary, and we went through Goodwill to help him find a job. And then you are going to want to make sure, if you haven't done one yet, that you complete an estate and financial plan. And this is where we start having conversations about, do you need a special needs trust? If you're going to do a special needs trust, who's going to be the trustee? How are you going to fund the trust? Is it going to be life insurance? Is it going to be real estate? Is it going to be investments? Is it going to be your pension? Is it going to be some combination of all of the above? What's that look like? How much do you need to provide for you? How much money do you have to set aside to provide for your child when you're gone? Who's going to be your child's guardian if he or she needs one when you're gone? I'm talking about minor children right now. So if you die while your child is under the age of 18, whether they have a disability or not, there's going to need a guardian. Assuming both you and your spouse die or both parents die, a guardian is going to be required for any minor child. And that's all going to be accounted for in your estate plan. The financial plan is, again, protecting your income, protecting your assets, and protecting your loved one. This isn't my world, but it is something I see so many families overlook, and it's something that bit me in the butt when my wife died. I was active duty. We had planned very heavily around what would happen if during one of my many deployments I didn't come home. But we never thought about what would happen if a stay-at-home mom died at 44. And I got saddled with a house in Connecticut and paying rent in Silver Spring, Maryland for about a year after she died, because we didn't have enough life insurance. We couldn't pay off the house. And it was a brutal period. I ended up selling the house as a cash only sale because I couldn't fix it up, and I just needed to get out from under the mortgage. So I'm very sensitive about making sure families do that planning. The other part of the planning that you need to talk about, if you have one spouse who is doing all of the disability stuff, attending the IEPs, talking to the therapist, talking to the doctors, you guys need to have monthly, quarterly, a conversation about what each other is doing. In my household, I was the primary breadwinner. I would go out and I would work and I would come home and I was clueless with what my wife was doing. And she paid all the bills because I was deployed. So I had to hack into all the bank accounts to figure out what bill, pay this electric bill, pay that, pay that phone bill. I mean, all of these things. And so if you have it, and most households do, if you have those things divided, talking about it monthly, quarterly, just making sure you're on the same page is really, really important. So I'm going to pause there, see if there's any questions that come in before I dive into the things to consider when your child becomes 18 and is considered a legal adult. All right, so I don't see any questions or anybody raising their hand telling me I'm going too fast. So I'm going to assume everything's good. When you have an adult child with a disability, the schools may be telling you need to be thinking about guardianship. And it can be tough because it's not really, at least it wasn't to me, clearly explained what guardianship meant. Now, I am my son's legal guardian. He's 22 years old. And we decided that guardianship was the right choice for us. When you become somebody's legal guardian, or if you're in California, a conservator, you are going before a judge in the state probate court, and you are petitioning the court to say that your child is, for lack of a kinder term, mentally incompetent, incapable of self-support. And you need to make their decisions for them in either the legal or financial world or both. And the judge will either grant you the petition or not. The child will have an attorney appointed to represent them. And that attorney is there to represent the child's interests. They're going to interview you, they're going to interview the child. If the child's nonverbal, they will still find a way to communicate via communication device or whatever the child uses to communicate. and then you will all go before the judge. Now, you can do this without hiring an attorney. I don't recommend it. I think anytime you're taking steps as significant as taking away civil liberties, you really should consult with an attorney who can advise you on everything that the impact of what you're doing. Supported decision-making, some states have a formal process for this. Most states do not yet, but it's the way you and I make our decisions. We will often have a core group of people that will reach out to when we have questions about something and we want their advice. That's really what supported decision-making is. The individual with the disability sits at the center, and they have a pool of trusted advisors, family members, and friends who they can reach out to help them make life decisions. Could be about having surgery. It could be about buying a home. It could be, making a TV purchase. It's really about giving the person the autonomy and the dignity to fail. Again, it's going to depend on where your child is with regards to whether you do guardianship or supported decision-making. I'm not here to tell you one is more correct than the other. Like I said, I'm my son's guardian, and we are working towards where eventually I'm not his guardian anymore. I want him to get to where we have a core group of people we can rely on for him, and he has an interest in making these decisions. That's not the case right now. Supplemental Security Income, SSI, is a benefit through the federal government that you have to prove that you're disabled and you can't have more than $2,000 in assets, and you really can't be making any substantial income. You can apply for SSI when the first day of the month when your child turns 18. If you apply earlier than that, then the Social Security Administration is going to look at your assets and your income to determine if the child is eligible. So you really want to wait until your child turns 18, the month your child turns 18, to apply for SSI. In 2021, the SSI benefit is $794. Many people are denied the first time they apply, and they get it on appeal. Or the other thing that happens when they get it is they may not get the full benefit of $794. They may get $583 or something very close to that number, which is 2/3 of the full SSI benefit, because Social Security believes you are providing what's called in-kind support and maintenance. So if the child is living with you and you are not charging fair market value rent, or you are providing more than 50% of the child's support, Social Security looks at it as you are providing in-kind support and maintenance because they're living with you and you're providing food and shelter. That child does not need the full Social Security benefit. There are ways to get around that. I don't have a foolproof way. I can't tell you if you do this, you're always going to get it. Generally speaking, what I have found works, and again, this is very general, it's not prescriptive. If you charge your child $500 a month in rent and you have a rental agreement, in many cases, that is what it takes for Social Security to give the full benefit of SSI. You'll want to talk to your tax advisor about what it means if you're charging rent, because that could be income to you. So if you're charging $500 a month per rent, that could be $6,000 a year in extra income. You're going to want to talk to your tax advisor to see what that means. If you did an estate plan when your child was 14, 15 years old, you're going to want to review that estate plan every 3 to 5 years. Laws change, your life changes, so you're going to want to review that. The same with your financial plan. In a perfect world, you'd be checking in periodically with what's going on in both those cases, not waiting for the 3 to 5 year mark, because there's nothing magical about 3 to 5 years. You really want to be making sure, as things in your life change, these plans change to reflect your new circumstances. When you have a child who is born male, you need to register them with selective service. And that is so they can qualify for things like FAFSA. They can get a job through state and federal governments. The federal government has made a commitment, and I'm talking to federal employees, you probably know this better than I do, but the federal government has made a commitment to hiring people with disabilities. To be eligible to be hired, they have to be registered with selective service, even if they're disabled. The last thing you want to do as a federal employee specifically is make sure that your HR department knows your child is disabled. When you have an adult child with disabilities, they could be eligible for your health insurance, dental insurance, and vision insurance for the rest of your life. Not until they turn 26, for as long as you live. But there are hoops you have to jump through to get it approved through the federal personnel office. And so Fed VIP with your vision and dental, that's one area where you can apply, and then the other one would be FERS for the pension, and the last one would be FEHB for your health insurance. FERS is no guarantee, because anything you have for your pension with FERS will be offset. Whatever your child's going to receive will be offset by any Social Security benefits they're receiving. So if they're getting SSI, SSDI, the FERS pension, let's say they're getting 50% of your pension, and it would be $1,000, but they're going to get $1,500 from SSDI, then there wouldn't be any pension for them to receive. I'm throwing very broad numbers out there, and this may be the first time you're hearing about any of this. You are going to want to make sure you talk to your HR department. All of this is in the OPM. It's all in their manual. In the handouts that I sent Kurt, I've highlighted much of this information so you can refer to it. It's not, I don't know how often HR departments are using this, but it's something you should be aware of and asking for. The last thing I want to talk about with regards to SSI is disabled adult child benefit. When your child qualifies for SSI before the age of 22, they also become eligible for the disabled adult child benefit. The disabled adult child benefit means when you become disabled, retire, or die, your child will be able to receive a portion of your Social Security benefits. When you become disabled or retire, those benefits that the child receives would be 50% of whatever you receive from Social Security, and it would come to the child in the form of SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance. The SSI would be reduced dollar for dollar, so eventually the child would lose all their SSI depending on how much SSDI they're receiving. 2 years after they start receiving SSDI, they are automatically enrolled in Medicare. So while you are alive, it is very possible for your child to be on your health insurance, your dental insurance, your vision insurance, Medicaid, and Medicare, and not have a single medical bill to worry about. The other thing that happens when you die, that disabled adult child benefit of 50% increases to 75%. So this is where, when you take your Social Security, really comes into play, because it's 50% and 75% of your Social Security benefit when you retire or file a disability claim. So taking it early could really hurt not only you, it could hurt your child. And I bring that up because I've had, a few federal employees tell me they aren't too worried about their Social Security benefit because they have their pension. And, so they're not worried about how much they're going to be getting from Social Security. So it's something you're going to want to talk it over with your financial advisor, what makes most sense for you, and factor that in when you're doing your planning. How much disabled adult child benefit could you potentially get? So again, I'm going to pause real quick just to check in, see how things are going, see if there's any questions before I go into the final stretches of what happens when children are 21 and older. And I'm hoping this is a pretty good pace. So at 21, they're leaving school if they're on a certificate program. And now you're faced with the choice of, do you use an agency or do you do self-directed? Well, what does that mean? As I mentioned at the beginning, every state has Medicaid waivers, and those Medicaid waivers pay for services, so, that are personal supports, vocational, community supports, or residential. When you have, and every state will have agencies that provide some or all of those services and get paid by the Medicaid waiver directly. So you don't have anything to do other than pick an agency. A very well-known, I think, agency out there is the various chapters of the ARC. The ARC is very often will do all 4 of those things, and all you have to do is sign up with your local chapter and have your child get taken care of. And from then on out, that chapter will take care of everything in terms of Medicaid waiver services for your child. What the Medicaid waiver will not pay for, even if you're working with an agency, is anything for that child personally. If that child has a sweet tooth, if that child likes to play video games, if that child likes to read books. I'm saying child, even though I mean an adult, somebody over the age of 21, you're still on the hook for making sure they have all of those things. When you go self-directed, there's even more work involved, although many families, myself included, prefer it, because you have the option of deciding who's going to work with your child. Self-directed means the state Medicaid agency will give you a budget to work off of. And that budget is going to be determined based on the needs of your child. So you're going to work with your state to determine how impacted your child is by his or her disability. And you're going to create with them that budget of how many hours of support each week you think you're going to need. And that will pan out to the budget. You're going to set the salary that you pay your staff within limits set by Medicaid. So you can't pay somebody $50 an hour, for example. By the same token, you can't pay somebody $5 an hour. There's going to be a floor and a ceiling to how much you can pay individuals, but it's pretty generous in how much wiggle room you have to go ahead and pay your staff. You're going to be responsible for finding staff. You're going to be responsible for doing the initial interviews, the hiring packets. All of that is going to be up to you. And this is where it can be a lot more work on parents who may already feel overwhelmed. But you have a lot of control. You decide if the staff's not working out, you can fire them. You can give them raises. What you cannot do is you cannot supplement their income from anything out of your pocket, because that could potentially be considered Medicaid fraud. So you want to be really careful about that. So that's agency versus self-directed. Does your child want to go to college or trade school? They're just because they have a disability doesn't mean they can't attend school. You should be looking at what do they want? What do they want to do? What types of opportunities are out there for them? There's a organization in Colorado I love called Teaching the Autistic Community Trades, TACT. And they have people on the spectrum welding and doing plumbing and doing commercial electrical work. It's amazing. So, there's no reason to think that your child can't do any kind of work or is only destined to do in what I don't call very fondly food, filth, and flowers, right? I mean, gardening or sweeping the trash or whatever. So more and more employers are looking at bringing in a neurodiverse workforce and hiring people with disabilities. More and more people are understanding that, a disability doesn't have to be a barrier. And you can get help for this through your vocational rehab providers. You can get Voc Rehab will help you find a job initially, get you trained up, provide benefits counseling, do an aptitude test, all of those things will be paid for by the state, so you don't have to cover it. And then they'll do a handoff to your state's Medicaid waiver provider for the ongoing vocational support. Sounding like a broken record, but I am going to say it again: the estate and financial plan. You just can't lose sight of this, and you really can't. I mean, I go back and I revisit my trust. Who's going to be my trustee as life changes? Because I've had some life changes. 9 years ago, I'd never thought about getting married again. This year, I'm engaged, right? I'm looking at moving to Florida. These are all changes that I've personally encountered that my estate plan needs to reflect. You're going to want to apply for benefits like SNAP, which is Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, when your child turns 22, even if you don't think they need it. Because when you are gone, who's going to be there to do this for them? Now, at 22, the program is going to ask, is your child providing their own household? That means, are they buying their own groceries? Are they preparing their own food? My son gives me a grocery list. He doesn't drive, so I'm buying his groceries, but he's giving me the grocery list. And he and I typically don't eat our meals together. He makes his own meals. So, they're not fancy. He's not making chicken cordon bleu, but he is cooking. He makes tater tots, he'll make chicken strips, or he'll cook spaghetti, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be gourmet, but can the child prepare their own meals? And that's really, it's something that I really wanted my child to be able to do, to teach him that independence and help him on that path of independent living. That's the overview of what you need to be doing. The theme that I'm hoping you're picking up on is, number one, don't wait to try to do it all after your child leaves for school. But number two, it's never too late to do any of this. If you have an adult child who's 25, 26 years old or older, and you haven't done any of this, it's probably not too late. You just might be on a longer waiting list, but it doesn't mean you keep putting it off. So the next two slides are going to be diagrams where I'm going to do my best to show you a visual representation of everything I've talked about. I'm not an artist, so I'm going to apologize in advance, but I think it does a better job than just sitting here and listening to me talk. So this first one is, again, just a quick overview of how everything works together. I didn't talk very much about ABLE accounts because I think they get a lot of press, but I don't feel that many people are very clear on how to incorporate it into the plan. So I don't think it's absolutely something you must do, especially if you're already feeling overwhelmed. The things I talked about in today's presentation are what I feel like you must absolutely do. The ABLE account is one of those things where when you have some bandwidth and you feel like you're in a better place, then you can work on it. It's really not going to impact, it won't negatively impact anything for you or your child if you don't have one. So let's take it off over here at the top left on life insurance. So while the parents are alive, the life insurance is not going to matter, but you're going to have life insurance on the parents. This is typically how people are funding their special needs trusts. It doesn't have to be the only way. I do know people that are funding it with real estate. I know people that are funding it with investments. But life insurance is typically the most cost-effective way of doing that. So when the parents die, the life insurance will go into the special needs trust. The trustee is responsible for managing how the money in the trust is spent and reporting and filing taxes and everything else for that trust. I do typically recommend working with a corporate trustee and then having a trust protector or a co-trustee from the family to just keep the trustee honest, for lack of a better term. And that's because most families don't have somebody in the family who really understands the ins and outs of what it means to be a trustee. The trust is a legal entity. It has its own taxpayer identification number, so it should be paying taxes just like you and I do. And there's a lot that goes into what you can and can't use a special needs trust for. So having a corporate trustee do that and manage that for you is often, in my personal and professional opinion, the way to go. The trust protector is appointed by you to make sure that if the trustee is not doing their job or is not, maybe the trustee isn't very familiar with your child. Let's say your child is in their 30s and they like to play with Legos. That could be seen by some corporate trustees as an unreasonable request because what 30-year-old plays with Legos? Having the trust protector there to say, no, they really do enjoy this. This is a valid, Lego Land is a valid place to go. Buying Legos is a valid expense. That's an example. The ABLE account in this case is what we're going to be using to pay for living expenses for the child. So the money from the life insurance comes in the special needs trust because you can only put $15,000 a year into an ABLE account. And currently, you can only have a maximum of $100,000 in the ABLE account if you're receiving SSI, because once that benefit exceeds $100,000, your SSI is suspended. So if you're going to be putting more than $15,000 into anything, it needs to be a special needs trust. I will say there are two different types of special needs trusts for those of you that are looking into putting your pension into a trust. If it can be, I don't want you going too far down that hole without talking to somebody if you're considering or you're worried about your pension and how that's going to affect your child. So the trust comes into, you're going to make a distribution from the trust to the ABLE account. Every ABLE account is allowed to have an authorized legal representative. That authorized legal representative is not the same thing as a trustee. It can be the same person, but it's not the same thing. The authorized legal representative is strictly for ABLE accounts, and they help the person with the disability manage their ABLE account. The person with the disability is the owner of the ABLE account, and they're the beneficiary of the ABLE account. So that money comes out and covers your day-to-day expenses. That could be rent, that could be buying groceries, that could be getting video games, whatever. And then the health insurance is going to come from the federal employee health insurance benefit, Medicaid, or Medicare. And I talked about those and how they qualify by going SSI or the disabled adult child benefit. What I didn't say, and I want to highlight, is not every state will qualify for Medicaid as soon as they start receiving SSI. It's going to depend on what state you live in. So while you're alive, you can serve as your rep payee and your authorized legal representative. You can also serve as a trustee of a trust that maybe you're not funding yet, but you open it up and you put $10 in it just to have the trust available. So if you were to die suddenly, it's there. And then Social Security is going to come in, and oftentimes when you have an individual with disability, Social Security is going to say you need a representative payee. Well, the parents can serve as representative payee as well. And then you don't necessarily have to be legal guardian. It is perfectly allowable to be an authorized legal representative and representative payee without being the child's legal guardian. So this is how they all tie together. So you could be using the rep payee account to pay for living expenses, and whatever the rep payee account doesn't cover, you could be using the ABLE account to supplement. Or you could be using a special needs trust. This is a more granular breakdown of how it would all work. So your parents, while they're alive, assuming that you're married, you would be insured and the money would go to each other when the person passes away. After both parents pass away, it could go to you could split the money to go to an estate if you have children without disabilities or other, maybe you want to leave money to a nonprofit, or you have other places where you want the money to go. So you have the non-disabled estate, and then you have the special needs trust with the trustee and the trust protector. The child would be getting SSDI and Medicare if they qualify for the disabled child benefit on the parents' Social Security benefit. Otherwise, they would be getting SSI and Medicaid. assuming they qualify for it. The special needs trust would be providing money to provide for the child's benefit. The ABLE account could also be used to provide money for the child's benefit, and then SNAP will provide groceries for the child. So again, what I'm trying to do with these pictures is show how all the words I've used in the last half hour, 45 minutes, how it all ties together. Because what I found in many of the presentations I attended as a parent was there was a lot of information, but very little connecting of the dots. So it's my hope today that you were able to see how some of these dots connected. If you want to reach out to me, I don't answer my phone. I'm working with people around the country. So email is really the best way to connect with me. My website is on here, specialneedsnavigator.us. If you like to learn without the phone call or the interaction, I do have a YouTube channel that you can find. Special Needs Navigator is the name of the YouTube channel. I also have a podcast where I interview experts and professionals from around the country and internationally that you may have never heard of. And that podcast is the ABCs of Disability Planning. And you can find it anywhere you get your podcast, be it Apple, Stitcher, Amazon, Google, what have you. You can find ABCs of Disability Planning there. And with that, Kurt, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present.
Wonderful presentation, Eric. Thank you so much. Folks, if you have a question, please pop that in the Q&A field. We've got time for some questions today. If you prefer to email Eric privately, you're also welcome to do that. I'm glad that you had mentioned the podcast. I'd forgotten about the podcast. We want to get that on this slide for future presentations. And another thing, we have another presentation scheduled next week, Tuesday, November the 9th at 12 o'clock Eastern. If you know someone that would benefit from a presentation like this, please reach out to Eric or reach out to me, and we'll get them registered for that event.
And the last thing I would ask, Kurt, is, I learn what resonates with families from the feedback that I get from the participants, good and bad. I mean, if somebody has negative feedback about something I didn't do well, I learn from that as much as somebody, or more as when people are telling me I did a great job. So I'm always looking to improve. So if people would feel more comfortable emailing you saying, hey, Eric said too many times, or what have you, I'm open to that kind of feedback.
We'll talk afterwards. Just kidding. Now, great presentation, really valuable information. Appreciate you taking the time to do this. As I mentioned, we'll have another one of these next Tuesday, the 9th. If you have an interest or know someone that would benefit from us, let us know. And if you have a question, and we don't right now, pop that in the Q&A field. We'll stick around for a few minutes. Eric, I wonder if you might be willing to go into your future. Eric had shared something really interesting with me about a vision for his future, and that is he's considering, and perhaps more than considering these days, moving out of state and having his son live independently. Eric, if you wouldn't mind if going into that for a minute and telling folks, like, how do you pull something like that off? What are the things you need to consider exactly? How do you get to that stage in life, from a parental standpoint, as well as your son being able to get everything he needs at the local level while you're, a couple hours away by plane?
You white knuckle it. Sure, Kurt. So yes, my fiance and I are talking about moving to Florida next year. The my vision is getting supports in place with my son, using a property management company or something similar while I'm alive, and definitely when I'm gone, to keep up with the house. I have housekeepers that keep up with the cleaning of the house. And then the staff will be provided through the self-direction. So I'm just going to be relying on the staff to check in and tell me if, hey, the sink's clogged or whatever, until my son gets to where he can do it. I've done a couple jaunts where I'm gone for a week at a time. I did a week in Jacksonville earlier this year, and then most recently I did a week in St. Petersburg for a special needs conference. And it was stressful, but it went okay. It's more of understanding what my son can and can't do. So prior to me leaving for a week, I would cook a lot of the meals and I would put them in the refrigerator for him, with the expectation when I'm gone longer, the staff would be working with him to make sure he's not eating peanut butter and jelly every day, just because it's easier. But it's really been working with the agencies and making sure the waivers are there to pay for the supports that he's going to need, and just getting it all done. It's stressful. I mean, there's no easy way about it. I'm very cognizant that things are going to break. It's going to be messy, and there's going to be times when I'm freaking out. But I'd rather have all that happen while I'm alive and young than stress about it when I'm in my 70s and 80s, wondering if I did enough. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. Eric, we do have a question about setting up a special needs trust. Is there a particular law firm that you like, use, recommend? Somebody's asking.
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen real quick. It's a tough question, because I work with people around the country, and it's going to depend on what state you're in. A good resource, and I'm going to put it in chat. A good resource is the Academy of Special Needs Planners. They have a find an attorney tool. I'm pulling it up so I can send you so I can put the link in chat. And what that does is it allows you to find an attorney in your area whose focus is working with individuals with disabilities. So let me put that in the chat. I think everybody is going to be able to see the chat, right, Kurt? And then hopefully they can copy and paste it, or you can. So I'll share my screen again so they can see what the screen would look like when they go to that website. So, Kurt, can you clarify that? Are you looking at the special needs answers in a big map of the US?
Yes.
Okay. This is the screen that you're going to find when you click on the link that I put in chat. And on the left-hand side here, you have all the different states. So let's click on Indiana. And from here, there's two major metropolitan areas. So if we go to Fishers, we find out there's only one attorney in Fishers, Indiana. Now, that doesn't mean there's not attorneys who might be able to help you. It just means that her focus is special needs planning, and she's probably going to do a better than average job. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's helpful. That's good. I might also suggest, I mean, Eric, your experience and most of your resources are probably in the area where we're located, which is metropolitan Washington, D.C. If the person that asked this question happens to be in that area, I would have you send Eric an email, and he might be able to give you some specific names of attorneys that he has experience with in our area, if you're in our area. I would do that anyway, because as Eric mentioned early on, his company is national and he has attorney resources nationwide. So there's a good possibility that he may know of a firm in your location.
So Lutherville, Maryland. Where's that? That's by Baltimore.
So that, yes, and HWK is there,
Yep.
Nicole Hewitt. I don't know if you want to
Yep.
talk about her a second.
Yeah, I like Nicole. I think she does a really good job. She's an estate planning attorney in Baltimore area. So Nicole Hewitt, HWK, she and I have done a lot of presentations and work together. And then another option, because I like to give people, I like to give people two people for, you never know where the chemistry is going to be. When you work with an attorney, there's got to be chemistry too. Another option would be Elville and Associates. They're another law firm that I've done a lot of work with in the Baltimore metropolitan area. I like them both.
Eric, one more time with the name of that second firm, please.
Sure, it's Elville and Associates. I'm going to type it in the chat too.
Thank you. Personal story for me, I had recommended to one of my clients, an attorney, and it didn't work out. It wasn't the right fit. There wasn't a connection. There was not good communication. So this individual, they ended up finding an attorney they liked through the husband's employer. It's one of those employee benefits where they make law firms available to you. If you have that, that's another place to consider looking. And they were happy with who the company was recommending.
I think that's a wrap, Kurt.
Yeah, I think so. Anything you want to say in closing before I wrap it up?
I appreciate people taking time out of their day to come on a webinar. I appreciate the fact that they're making the time to listen, and I hope they found value in this, and I hope I was able to give them some information that maybe they hadn't heard about with regards to the federal stuff specifically.
Well, thank you. And thank you for being here again today. Something else I just thought of, we have recorded this event. If anybody would like a copy, just let us know. We'll be following up by email just to say thank you and circle back around another time to see if you have questions. So if you know somebody that would like the recording or you would like to re-listen to it and have another look over the slides, we can make that available to you. So thanks very much. Any additional questions, please reach out to Eric. His website again, Special Needs Navigator. And website, email address is eric@specialneedsnavigator.com. Did I get that right, Eric?
Specialneedsnavigator.us.
.us. Thank you. Okay, folks, have a wonderful afternoon. Be safe, stay healthy. Thank you so much for being here today.